Hi everyone. I'm so excited. I've been like counting down the days until this webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and just share this with Facebook as well. Give me 1 second while I figure this out. No, we want to share it. 1 second, everybody. I'm so excited you guys are here. It's so fun to see everybody like joining. Okay, you guys, we're just going to give it a couple more minutes. I'm trying to link this with my Facebook group so that way everybody there can also see it. I don't think it's working though. You guys, I'm so glad you're here. It is raining in Ethiopia, so bear with me in case it gets loud. I only get good network when I am outside, and now it's raining, so it's kind of a predicament. Okay, you guys, I am live on Facebook now too. I'm so excited to be here and to be talking about how to travel Africa during COVID-19. So I'm also seriously in Ethiopia right now, and that means that power can go out at any minute. My network can go out at any minute. So if all of a sudden I disappear from the screen, that just means that I've been cut off from the internet, and hopefully I will be back in a couple minutes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share something to get this going. Give me 1 second. Okay, you guys, let's get this webinar going. Okay, so if you don't know me, my name is Val, and I am from the US. I'm from Indiana, which is like a tiny little state that you would never visit ever unless you had family there or you were born there. But it's super small, it's in the Midwest. So I know that if you are like following along and you are like on this webinar or you are, on my Facebook group, I know that you already want to travel Africa, so I'm not going to spend much time like telling you why like Africa is so amazing, but I will say that the word that people describe the most when talking about traveling Africa is magic. Like there are some awesome quotes from people who describe Africa as magic. That's how I describe it. That's how all the travelers I meet who end up going to Africa, they always end up saying like, "Oh my God, it was magical." And like despite how frustrating it can be and how challenging and how smelly and irritating and sometimes just difficult to travel, at the end of the day, African countries are magical to travel. So that's why I'm so glad that you are here. Okay, so if you're wondering, basically, I have grown up in the US my whole life, and for some reason, I always wanted to travel Africa. Like ever since I was young, I was like, Africa is the place where I want to go. I didn't even know the different countries. I didn't know the differences between them, but something about the continent, like I just felt like was like calling my name out, and that was the place I had to go. So after college, I did a 3-month volunteer experience in Ethiopia. It turns out that the nonprofit I was volunteering with was totally illegal. And most of the nonprofits I saw and had friends working at was also either they were either illegal or maybe they weren't creating like a good impact, or most of the money was going really to the Americans who were running it and not actually to the community. So it was like a super eye-opening experience because I was a social work major and I was like, oh my gosh, this is some of the negative impact that happens with volunteering. However, despite the fact that the volunteering kind of sucked, like the actual experience of being in Ethiopia was incredible. Like it was my first time in Africa. I was so surprised. I loved it. I loved the culture. I loved the people. I loved the food, the coffee, everything about it was so good. So after I volunteered, I went back to the US. I got my master's. I worked for a year, and then I was like, I was talking about Ethiopia every single day. Like I'm sure my friends and family were so sick of me talking about Ethiopia. And so finally I was like, you know what, I have to decide if this is like a one-time mountaintop experience where it was just like, it was just good because of the people I was with, or is there a reason why I cannot stop thinking about going back to Africa? So in the end, I decided like, I'm just going to travel to a few more countries and also revisit Ethiopia. So my idea was to travel from South Africa to Ethiopia. I thought I would do it in like 6 weeks time, and I thought I would visit like 4 to 5 countries. But as you can see, I ended up traveling for 7 months, 9 days across the entire length of the continent. So I traveled from South Africa all the way up until I got to Cairo. It's called the Cape Town to Cairo route. So I did South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt all by myself without flying. So I pretty much did buses the whole way, or cargo boats, or hitchhiking. So at the end of this like training, I will tell you how much I spent, because I know that can be, you know, super helpful if you're thinking about doing a trip as well. But yeah, basically my trip was incredible. People always ask me like, what is it like to travel Africa? And it's really hard to sum up if you've never been here before. But basically I was doing insanely cool things almost every day. So I did the pyramids in Sudan and Egypt. So on the top, you'll see me in Sudan. Those were actually my favorite pyramids. And then I was in Nairobi. I hung out with some baby elephants who are so cute. And then I also rode an ostrich outside of Nairobi, which was so hard. It's actually really hard to ride an ostrich. And the whole time you're riding them, you're kind of afraid that they're going to like use their neck to like turn around and like peck you, because they're just like totally pissed off that you're riding them. I was also in Tanzania. So when I was in Zanzibar, I went swimming with turtles. And then that's me in a selfie with a gorilla. So I mean, honestly, I could go on and on and on about all the cool things I did while traveling Africa, like trekking gorillas. I mean, trekking gorillas, swimming with sharks. I mean, all kinds of things. But it was like every day was just incredible. So, now, besides the fact that I traveled Africa and I loved it, and then after my trip, I moved to Ethiopia. And I've been here ever since. So I've just been helping travelers because I'm just like, oh, Africa is so amazing. You just have to travel it, right? But the reason why I'm also here today, and the reason why I like continually promote travel in Africa, is because one, I know you're gonna love it, and two, because the impact is so huge. So when I first came, you know, to Ethiopia, I thought like, you know, I had to volunteer. I had to help out. But really, you don't have to volunteer. You don't have to help. Africa doesn't need you. But I will say that tourism in Africa is incredible for the local economy and for creating jobs, especially for women. So, for example, in 2019, $168 billion was created in Africa by tourism, and that was over 24 million jobs. 24 million jobs, you guys, that is incredible. And the coolest thing about tourism in Africa is like, as a traveler, you're not going to want to spend a lot of time in these big capital cities. Like they're boring, they're smelling, like you don't want to go, right? But what you do want to do is go to the rural areas, because that's where you can go hiking, that's where you can see animals, that's where you can go swimming, that's where you meet like real people, you know, from the real cultures. And so tourism and travel creates jobs where there's the least amount of jobs, okay? Now, despite the fact that Africa had like $160 billion of revenue, like look over here, this pisses me off so much. So the country of France, you know, made over about 250 billion USD in the same year that Africa made 160. So Africa is like 54, 55 countries, and they still made less tourism or less money from tourism than the country of France. So nothing against France, but it is so sad to me that one country in Europe can make more money in tourism than an entire continent that is filled with so many cool things. So also put this in like perspective for you. So on this map, you see that Africa, I mean, France is highlighted in red, and the entire continent of Africa is 50 times bigger than the country of France. And yet again, France is outbeating it in tourism. So I don't know, for some reason, this just statistic drives me insane. And it's like my mission to see the continent of Africa do more tourism than the country of France. Like, I don't care if it takes my whole entire lifetime, I'll be promoting travel in Africa until that happens. And I'm so sorry if you can hear the background. Like, it's raining really hard. I'm outside. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Okay, so basically over the next 10, 15 minutes, I really just want to share a little bit about what is traveling Africa like during COVID. Should you go now or should you wait? Is it even safe? Is it going to cost more money or less money? And what is it like? Like, are there people here? Okay. And then at the end, I'm just going to give my top favorite tips for how to plan your route in Africa. So I'm hoping that it will help you. So I've been in Ethiopia this whole time during COVID. And to be honest, it has been like nothing. Like, it's just been like, it's almost unreal how normal Ethiopia has been. And it has definitely not been like this. So I think this is that famous meme from the fight in Australia that broke out over the toilet paper hoarding. So yeah, I would say as a continent, they did not see this level of crazy hoarding. And as an American, when I hear Americans talk about how they need to help Africa, I'm just like, please, like, Africans are not the ones doing this. Like, I feel like it's kind of ridiculous what I saw happening around the world. And really in Ethiopia, things were so normal. And, you know, I have friends throughout the whole continent, and I work with a lot of travelers and a lot of businesses in Africa. And, you know, we didn't see this level of craziness or quarantining or even social distancing, because social distancing is so hard to do in Africa because people live in these tight little compounds. They take public transportation more. And I think most people in Africa realize that a lockdown would do worse for each country because of the economic disaster it would cause. And, you know, like last night I went out to dinner with some friends, and one of the Ethiopian guys was just like, yeah, there's a lot of things that would kill us before COVID. Like, malaria, TB, HIV, like, you know, the economic loss, like all these things would kill someone before COVID in Africa. So most of these countries have really stayed quite stable. So here's another example. So I have this Facebook group that I run, and there is this girl, Crystal, who I love. She's so amazing. And she was wondering, like, should she come now to Africa? Or should she wait? And she was really worried about COVID because obviously it's really scary to travel during this time, and you also want to be responsible as a traveler, right? So one of the other travelers was like, hey, Crystal, this is like a screenshot of what she said. Like, once you get through this hurdle of actually coming, I promise everything is fine on the ground. You know, crossing land borders can take a bit of practice, but once you get used to it, it's super normal. So she went on to say that cases are low, that you'll get some incredible experiences because there's less tourists. And she kept saying, you know, like, I seriously recommend taking this plunge. I promise it's worth it once you get here, and it doesn't feel like pandemic travel. So I'm highlighting this because, like, I feel like this is what I hear over and over and over, and also what I see just being here in Ethiopia, that, like, it sounds so scary and hard to travel Africa during COVID before you go, but once you come, you're just like, it's kind of weird how unserious it's been taken. I don't know if unserious is a word, but I'm going to use it. The longer I stay in Ethiopia and I try to learn the local language, the worse my English gets. So I just roll with it at this point. But really, I just want to encourage you that, like, once you get here on the ground, it's pretty much normal. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's hailing. You want to see it? I don't know if you guys can see. Like, it's just all hail, like ice coming down. I'm going to have to re-record this, I'm sure. Okay, so anyways, once Crystal finally left, she chose to go to Namibia first. She ended at, I messaged her when she arrived, and she's like, Val, I'm so sorry. I'm on a 10-day safari. I can't talk. And then she sent me this picture. And it was just like, oh my gosh, of course. Like, you're so scared about traveling Africa before you go. And then once you arrive, it's like, you're just busy doing a safari, doing your thing. And again, like, I love that she used the word, in Namibia, magic happens. Because again, I swear there's magic in Africa. Something about traveling this continent is just such a special, special experience. So I also kept up with, like, other travelers who are on the continent. So one of the girls who I also convinced to come travel, I asked her how it was, and, like, this is her response. Like, yeah, she just went diving in Egypt the entire time. Now she's in Mozambique partying, celebrating her birthday. So yeah, if you're wondering what is traveling Africa like during COVID, it's like this. It's like scuba diving. It's like, I mean, it's like doing normal, awesome, cool things every single day, and kind of taking a breather from what COVID has been like in your home country and around the world for most of the part, you know? So I'm not saying that, like, traveling during COVID is like the same as before, but I still think it offers a really amazing experience if that's what you want to do right now. So, for example, when I was traveling during my backpacking trip, I went to the island of Lamu, which is off the coast of Kenya. So Lamu is really cool because there's like no cars on the island. You can only get around by walking or by taking a donkey. And I showed up during Ramadan, not even knowing it was Ramadan, and it's a Muslim island. So I was the only traveler at my hostel. I saw no other travelers the entire time I was there. Everything was closed until nighttime. And let me tell you, like, I still had an amazing time. Like, it's still, it was still an incredible time, and it felt really authentic because I got to really experience like the real culture, and see what life was really like. And at the end of the day, like, I was still on a tropical island in Africa with donkeys everywhere. Like, it was still really cool. So I talked to a lot of travelers, and I don't know any traveler who comes to Africa who says that they're coming because they want a touristy experience or because they want, to meet a bunch of other people. No, like, people who come to Africa want a real adventure. They want to explore, they want to experience, they want to experience something different than like what you currently have back home. And you really want to have a real adventure where you're really getting to know the cultures. And there's so many different cultures and so much diversity on the continent. So, I mean, I think traveling during COVID is going to be less travelers, but it's going to be a more of an authentic experience. It's going to be similar to when I was traveling during Ramadan in Lamu. Like, I didn't meet a lot of people, but it was still incredible. So another thing about like what is traveling Africa like during COVID, and I think the thing is it's weird because no one takes COVID seriously. So maybe if you're in Kenya or South Africa, people will see COVID as a threat. But for the most part, people aren't super worried about it. And that's like a really different perception than what, what my family in America thinks about COVID or other Americans or wherever you're from. The whole world has been so caught up with COVID, obviously, because it is a huge threat. But in Africa, it's not seen quite the same way. So it's kind of a weird thing to be here and to not have people freaking out as much, but also kind of a nice change of pace, I guess. Now, it's not that Africa doesn't have any rules. So, for example, in Ethiopia, you're supposed to wear a mask. No one does, but you're supposed to. Sometimes stores will take your temperature before you go in. The traveler who's in Mozambique was telling me that she just faces so many crazy rules that don't make sense. For example, she's in Mozambique right now, and you're not allowed to swim in the ocean, but you're allowed to do water sports. So you can be in the ocean if you're doing a water sport, but you can't be in the ocean just to be in the ocean. So things like that don't make any sense. And honestly, I think it's set up just to get tickets and get bribes and things like that. So when you're traveling, you might face some of these crazy rules, and I think it's just better never to analyze them. If you analyze them, they will drive you insane because they don't always make sense. So yeah, there's a level of extra rules, but like, I mean, there's always been rules in traveling Africa, so it's just a little bit more. Also, when it comes to traveling, so most of the time you're going to need a PCR test before you enter a new country. So if you're flying, it's super easy because you're in a capital city, probably you're able to get the PCR test and then you just fly into the next country. If you're at the border trying to cross, you're going to get a PCR test, and that PCR test might not be processed there because the town is so small. So they'll send off the results to a big city. And then by the time you get the results back, you only have a few hours to cross the border before your results become invalid because it's taken too long. So flying is easier, but you can still definitely travel by public transport still and cross borders like normal. You're just going to have to be a little bit conscious of the timing of the test and where you're getting tested. Or you'd get tested in the capital city and then take a bus directly to the border, and that would also work. So besides the fact that you're gonna have like less tourists, more authentic experience, and maybe some additional hassle, I know what you're probably wondering is the safety, obviously. So when it comes to safety, I would say I would not be scared about traveling Africa as long as you're fully vaccinated. So right now I'm planning a trip to southern Ethiopia. I'm planning a trip to Mauritius, but I'm also vaccinated, so I'm not as worried. And the benefit of being fully vaccinated is also that it allows you to skip quarantine. So most of the countries, as long as you enter with a negative PCR test within like 3 to 5 days, you can enter. It's no big deal. But if you're not fully vaccinated, you have to quarantine. And then you have to quarantine in like a Western hotel, so that's super expensive. So that's just another incentive to get fully vaccinated if you're not already. And then while you're traveling, you should probably be aware of the fact that not a lot of people have the vaccine. So I live in Ethiopia, and I I think I know 2 people who have been vaccinated out of my Ethiopian friends. Most of them don't want the vaccine, even though it is like offered and actually kind of becoming more widely available. And so, for example, out of the 173 million doses of vaccines that the world has, only 0.8% of it has been in Africa. So less than 1% of the people who are vaccinated in the world are in Africa. So that's why it's like, even if you're vaccinated, you still want to wear masks and you still want to be conscious that other people aren't, and you don't want to get them sick. You don't want to pass any germs to them. Now I also always go with like the worst case scenario. So, okay, worst case scenario, you're fully vaccinated. If you become a breakthrough case and get COVID anyways, chances are you'd have to quarantine in your hostel in like a private room. So that would cost a little bit more. Or you might get stuck quarantining in a hotel, which is going to be Western and more expensive, maybe $100 a night. Or you get sent to a government center, which would be free, but horrible. You do not want to end up there. So I think when you're traveling, you definitely want to have like a cushion on worst case scenario, like if you needed extra money to quarantine alone. Also, you have to know that like maybe the hospitals aren't great. There are obviously some great clinics, some American clinics, but they're going to cost more and they might not be widely available. So for example, I have an Ethiopian friend, but I mean, he's like 60, but we're friends, but he's 60 years old. He was not vaccinated and he was a little bit heavier and older. So he got COVID and then had to be treated in a hospital. So he ended up paying like an 8,000 USD bill for that. So you have to kind of be aware that if you're not vaccinated or if you get stuck in the hospital, you're going to have to pay. So that's when maybe traveler's insurance might be worth it. And you want to double check that they would cover like a COVID cost. So that's kind of like worst case scenario if you're vaccinated. Obviously, if you're not vaccinated, I think the chances of you getting COVID are high, and that could be dangerous because you're in countries that don't have as much healthcare, treatments, and then you're not vaccinated. So that's what I'm saying, just get the vaccine. Now, when it comes to figuring out, like, okay, where do you actually go? Like, which country do you go to, and what country is breaking out in like some kind of variant or having some kind of issue? So it's really easy to figure this out. Just go to the cdc.gov website, and you can go to traveler destinations, and then every country in the world is listed, and they'll tell you the COVID level. So for example, I just did Angola because it's like alphabetical order, and it's like the first African country that always shows up. So Angola is at like a level 2. So I mean, that's actually better than most places around the world. So that's really awesome. So you can check out any country you're going to make sure that it's not like a hot spot. Because also if it's a hotspot, the rules for traveling are going to be harder, so it's like not even going to be the best travel experience. Also, when it comes to figuring out like how do you actually enter these countries, what are the requirements? I mean, you can just Google. Here's like a quick Google search I did for Angola, and it just says proof of negative PCR test within 72 hours. So you might get different information. For example, Crystal, the backpacker who I mentioned earlier, she heard from a tour guide that she just needed like the antibody test, and then turns out that wasn't right. So then she had to go get a PCR test. So obviously that's like double the cost, extra the stress. So yeah, be aware that like you might get different information and it's going to be annoying. Just prepare yourself. You're going to mess up at least one and have to pay for an extra test. Put that in your budget. But other than that, know that usually a PCR test within 3 days of entry is all you need to do. So that's actually super awesome to know. So the pros, basically to sum up, should you travel in Africa during COVID? Pro is there may be some discounts and less cost because there's actually less travelers, and people are so excited for tourists and travelers to come back that they're offering lower prices. So all the travelers I know are getting like cheaper prices on safaris, lodging, activities, and you're gonna get a way more authentic experience. And at the end of the day, it's gonna be more authentic, and you're still in Africa, and there's still a billion people here. So it's not like you're gonna be like lonely. There's a billion people for you to talk to. It's gonna be better than your home country for sure. I guarantee you. If you're from America or Europe or Australia or wherever, I think you're gonna have a better experience in Africa than anywhere else in the world, because it's just like, I mean, it just was hit, like Africa as a continent was hit less hard with the virus and with all the social distancing rules. So it's almost refreshing to be in Africa, I think. Feels a little bit more like normal, almost like 2019. And then the last thing is, in some ways, I feel like the optimal timing is now, because one, like if your work is less busy now because of COVID, it's better to travel now before COVID ends and becomes super, super busy. Or maybe after COVID ends, you're going to want to do more, like, more work or see your friends and family that you haven't seen for a while. So actually traveling now might be better. Or maybe you're a remote worker because of COVID, and so you can actually travel Africa while working, and then you have an income. So that could be helpful. So I think there's a lot of reasons why traveling Africa now can be great. And also, again, like when last month I went home to the US and I saw my friends and family, and like the amount of anxiety they had from just everything that's happened over the past year was so crazy high, and I just could not relate. So if you are just feeling so stressed out from COVID, I would almost recommend just coming now, traveling Africa, because I think it's honestly going to make you feel better. Now, obviously, there's also some cons of traveling Africa. So, for example, you are going to have to pay for a PCR test in each country. So that's between $20 to $80. So you're going to want to fit that into your budget. Other things like one of the girls who's traveling right now, who I convinced to travel, she couldn't get foreign currency out in time because people's working hours were different, so she had to pay for her Mozambique visa in the local currency, and then that costs $15 extra than the normal visa. So there's kind of like annoying things like this. So you definitely want to have that budgeted in, but I think it might balance out with the discounts you're getting. Also, if you're traveling slower and going to fewer countries, you're paying less PCR tests. So that also would help you. Cons also, again, more silly rules. You might get hit with a bribe. You might get hit with a stupid fee that does not make sense. Prepare yourself now. Travel in Africa is also all about being in the moment and having a sense of humor, and that's definitely going to be true during COVID now more than ever. Cons, you will meet fewer backpackers. So you're going to have a more authentic travel experience, and you're going to see, these really crazy cool animals and places, and you're going to have it more all to yourself, but you're going to meet less backpackers, and meeting backpackers is really fun. So that's kind of a disadvantage. Again, if you do get sick, it may be expensive, and it could be dangerous if you're not vaccinated. So I would say if you're in between, should you travel Africa or not? I would say as long as you're fully vaccinated, I would go for it. Like, I think, like who knows how long COVID's going to last? Who knows what's going to happen? So as long as you're vaccinated, I would say go for it. As long as your doctor is okay with it, I mean, why not, right? Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. That was like, oh my gosh, 27 minutes all about COVID. Okay, so let's switch gears onto okay, let's say you want to travel Africa. Where do you actually go? So I always tell people to start in South Africa. It is the easiest country to travel. There's more English, there's better roads, there's more hostels, more backpackers, better transportation. Like, if you just fly into Cape Town, you're going to see the mountains, the ocean, you're going to get some super good wine, some super good beer, and then you're going to be 90% of your worries are going to disappear. So if you have no idea where to start in Cape Town, work your way down the coast as slow as you can, go to all those cool little beach towns like Coffee Bay, Jeffreys Bay, and then go on up to Lesotho, the country of Lesotho, which is inside South Africa, then see the rest of South Africa, go to Joburg, and from Joburg you can catch a bus to 5 other countries. So that's what I would recommend if you're new to Africa, new to backpacking, and just kind of freaked out about your trip. And I know there's tons of stories about looting in South Africa, but I have tons of friends there, and it's they are assuring me that everything is fine. So if you don't want to go to South Africa because you've already been there, or you just want to see East Africa or some other place, I would recommend Tanzania. That's always the second destination I recommend you to start in, because first of all, if you see Kilimanjaro, it's incredible. And then if you see Zanzibar, this is a picture from Zanzibar, and it is so gorgeous. So, I mean, you can't go wrong when you're in a place like this. And Tanzania also is connected by bus so easily to the rest of East Africa, so you can start there and then kind of go the rest of your way. So let me just keep going. I don't know if you guys can hear background noise, but in Ethiopia, where I'm at, there's 110 million people, so it's never quiet. There's always someone knocking on your door, or visiting you, or a church prayer in the background. There's always something happening. Okay, so this photo is so funny. This is a picture of me in Harar, Ethiopia, and if you go to the outskirts of Harar at nighttime, you can feed hyenas. There's a hyena whisperer, and he calls wild hyenas to you, and you put raw meat in your mouth, and then they come and they bite the raw meat out of your mouth. And it sounds kind of fun, but when you're actually doing it, you realize how easily you could be bit. And when I came home that night, a hyena had jumped on me, so I had paw prints all over my jacket, and I was that is so weird to have paw prints from a hyena on my jacket. Anyways, okay, so if you're not sure how long to travel each country, I always say 3 weeks is a good minimum. You can do it in less. There are a couple countries I traveled in less, but it's just travel is so slow that you want to be there at least 3 weeks. I would say 4 to 6 weeks is even better. It's more ideal, especially for countries like South Africa or Tanzania when there's so much to do. You really need a full month or longer. And then there's some people who travel for like 3 months. So you're traveling like slower and you get to know the culture more, you save more money. Usually a tourist visa lasts for 3 months, so you want to make sure you leave before your visa ends. But honestly, I would just recommend saying 4 to 6 weeks would be ideal, and don't feel like you're traveling too slow if you're planning 3 months per country. That is also totally fine. So the other thing that you're probably wondering is like, how do you actually cross these countries? So every country connects by bus unless there's like an active conflict. For example, right now Ethiopia is at war with Eritrea, so that border is closed, but like 90% of the borders in Africa are usually open. So some of the countries you travel and it's like so easy. So it's like one city to the next city, to the next city, to the next city, to the next country, and then you're out, right? But some countries don't connect as well. So I wanted to give you an example of why transport takes so long. So here was my route in Kenya. So if you can see, I started in Kampala, and then, so that was in Uganda, and then I took a bus to Nairobi. So then I chilled in Nairobi for a while. Then I took another bus, a night bus, to Mombasa. Mombasa is so beautiful. Hung out there for a while. Then I took a bus from there to Lamu, the island of Lamu, chilled there for a while. Then from Lamu, I don't know if things have changed, but when I was doing it, I could not get a bus from Lamu back to Kenya. So I had to go back to Mombasa. And then from Mombasa, I had to go back to Kenya. And then back to Nairobi. When I was in Nairobi, I realized that there was this really cool ostrich farm. So then I went to the ostrich farm, rode the ostrich, and then I ate an ostrich cheeseburger, and now I'm vegan. I think I felt really bad after that experience, like the ostrich guilt hit me or something. But then from the ostrich farm, I had to go back to Nairobi, and then from Nairobi, I took a bus to Moyale, which is at the border of Ethiopia. So basically, I was in Kenya for 21 days, and 8 of those days I was on a bus. And I'm talking like, it's like an all-day thing. Even if you're just there, even if you think the bus is going to be like 4 hours, 5 hours, by the time you actually get there, by the time the bus takes off, by the time you stop a million times and the bus breaks down, it always breaks down on the way, for real. And then you get to the city and then you get to your hostel. It's like it's been all day and you are exhausted. So yeah, 38% of my time in Kenya was on a bus. So imagine if you go to a country for only 2 weeks and maybe 5 of those days you're actually on a bus. That means you're only actually there for 9 days, which really is not very much. Okay, so if you are budget conscious, I just wanted to let you know how much I spent. So I traveled for 7 months, 9 days. I went to 13 countries and I spent about $8,000 total, not including my flights there or back. So for 13 countries, I mean, part of the reason why it was so expensive was going to more countries adds more visa costs. So I spent like $750 in visa fees alone. But really, I would say I was a pretty moderate traveler. So I know some travelers who spent less money. I met a lot of backpackers who were from Israel, so they had actually just gotten out of the army. So they were super like stealthy and like they traveled with a tent, they cooked their own food. And when I asked them how much they spent, they were spending about $750 per month. And then there's some travelers who spent more than me, more than the super frugal travelers, and they were spending about $1,500 per month. So this is like USD that I'm talking in. So those are the travelers who are climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, who are going on a safari, who are staying in the dorm room, if not maybe a private room sometimes, and like a little bit more, maybe you're drinking more, maybe you're eating at better restaurants, you're eating at your hostel more. So I would say between $750 to $1,500 is what you'll spend, and I was in the middle at about $1,000 per month. And then obviously if you travel slower and you go to less countries, especially during COVID because of the PCR test, you'll spend even less. So for example, let's say you have $3,000, not including your flights. I would say that means you can travel to about 2 to 4 months. Okay, maybe you could travel a little bit longer, maybe you can make money along the way, or maybe you're gonna spend more because you're climbing Kilimanjaro and then you're gonna travel less. So if you're traveling for $3,000, 2 to 4 months, that means probably 2 to 5 countries, basically. So Southern Africa is more expensive, but let's say you started in South Africa, you worked your way down the coast, you visited Lesotho, which is that country in the middle of South Africa. Then you go out, you explore Joburg, maybe you go to Kruger for a safari. Then you could go to maybe Botswana and Namibia. So I always tell people to take a one-way flight because, again, travel takes so long that going back from Namibia to South Africa is just going to be like 3-4 extra days of traveling that's like just not needed. But you can do it however you want. But I would recommend like buying a one-way flight to Cape Town and then flying out of Namibia. So that could be like an example of one kind of route that you could take. And then let's say you were starting in Tanzania instead, you could fly into Dar es Salaam, obviously do Zanzibar, so good. You could do Pemba Island, you could do Arusha where Kilimanjaro is, and then from the Serengeti you could cross into Kenya, and then fly out of Nairobi. Or if you have more time, you could actually go to Uganda. I mean, Uganda is so great. And then from Uganda, you could take a bus to Kenya and then still fly out of Nairobi. Or of course, you could always do that backwards as well. So you could do Nairobi to Kampala, and then from Kampala to Dar es Salaam. So anyways, you guys, that is basically what I wanted to share with you. So I hope you're feeling like, yes, I can travel Africa as long as I've been vaccinated. COVID actually could be amazing to travel in, or at least, you know, a great option. I don't have to wait, you know, you can travel now. And hopefully, you know, that you can travel slow and go to all these incredible countries. So now I wanted to also tell you that I recently released my How to Travel Africa course. I used to have an ebook, like hundreds of people took it. They traveled Africa, and I met a lot of people who traveled Africa in Ethiopia when they were visiting, which is really fun. And then I wanted to update it and also just make it more interactive. So what I did is I turned it into a course. It's on Udemy right now. Today it just came out. So it covers everything from like an introduction to Africa, like the 5 things you have to know about the continent before you go, things I didn't know, and it would have just seriously saved my trip and made it so much better if I would have known before. It talks about your big why. It talks about why does Africa have such a bad reputation. I think after living here, I kind of understand why it does and why it's ridiculous that it has a bad reputation. And then also, how do you know whose advice to trust on traveling Africa? Because you don't want to be, you know, listening to these people who don't know what they're really talking about, but at the same time, you don't want to ignore advice that actually would be helpful and would keep you safe, right? So the course also has all these like courses and videos on before you go. So things like vaccines and medications, how do you plan your route? So like super detailed on like how to plan it, and then how to do it during the best seasons, how to make sure you don't miss something that you really want to do because it's rainy season. It goes over your budget in detail. So if you saw that number about how much I spent and you're like, oh my God, I do not have that much money, I can show you how to save more money and how to actually make money along the way using tips that other backpackers did and like what I've done after like living here in Ethiopia for so many years. Things about how do you get your bank to, you know, not like close your accounts while you're traveling. How many Visa cards do you need? Do you need Visa or MasterCard? How much USD should you bring with you? Because you do need to bring some with you. And do you need to bring like 100s or 20s and like old or new, or what's the best amount to bring? The course will go over that. It goes over your passport, how many passport pages you need for how many countries you're going to, how to get visas, even for countries like Sudan where you have to get like, you know, an invitation letter and maybe you don't know anyone there, and all kinds of things like that, plus a packing list. And I'm super like minimalist on packing. I'm big into packing light, and I don't want you to waste your money on anything. So I tell you only essential things you need to bring and what is just crap and you don't need to bring. And then it also goes over during your trip. So like how to stay safe. So the course is set up with like a video and an action sheet for every day for 28 days, going over everything you need to know how to travel Africa. And some of the videos are like 7 minutes long, 5 minutes long, 10 minutes long, but the video on safety is like literally 22 minutes long. So I really dive deep into all the reasons why it's safe, but also how to stay safer. I talk about the time I got held at knife point and like all kinds of things like that. Also, how to stay healthy, how do you prevent malaria, how do you cross borders, how do you catch buses, how do you know where to go, where to stay, how to do camping in a safe way, and also how to make an impact and kind of have a theme for your trip. And then, of course, it goes into after your trip. So after your trip, it's not like you're just done. Like there is a parasite that you need to be checked for. If not, the parasite can be deadly. And I know a lot of people who got it and caught it luckily in time. And then I also have tons of fun bonuses. So if you're a female traveling by yourself, obviously there's some extra safety precautions you need to do. And obviously there's extra packing and all kinds of extra things you can work on or like think about. And then if you want to volunteer and work along the way, I give you some ideas on how to do that, how to make an impact while doing it, how not to like steal jobs, but actually to do something positive and maybe even make money along the way. And then obviously after my trip, I moved to Ethiopia. So there's a whole section on what is it like to live in Africa. I dive deeper into traveling during COVID, and then I have like an ultimate checklist because there's so many things when it comes to traveling in Africa. So it's like, boom, boom, boom. This is what you have to do to have a safe, ethical trip. So this is the course. It's on Udemy. I'm going to put the link up right now. I hit the wrong button. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you should see a link. If not, I'm going to post it and email everybody so that you have it. But I'm doing a special. So if you sign up in September and leave a 5-star review, then I will do a call with you on WhatsApp. So buy the course and then I can call you on WhatsApp and we can like plan your trip in depth, because I just want to make sure that everyone has a really good trip. And I know it's so nice to actually talk to someone on the phone and like get personal advice for your own trip. And then the course also comes with a link to this new Facebook group I created. So if you're in my current Facebook group, this one's a little bit different. This is going to be way more personal and I'll be answering any of your questions you have. So if you're like, I really need some personal advice on my individual trip, then the course comes with this Facebook group so you can get like 24/7 access to me. It's not really 24/7 access. I'm on East African time zone. So, you know, probably if you're in the US, it's gonna be morning time I'm available, but you know, we can make it work, so don't worry. So anyways, I just want to say thank you so much for joining this course. Also, if you see this picture of me, this is me when I was crossing the Burundi border. So if you're wondering what a border crossing looks like, it looks like this. And then you're crossing, this is me leaving Tanzania, entering Burundi, and then I went through this like it's called no man's land, so that's what it looks like. But again, my whole course will dive into border crossings and how to do them and how not to make the same mistakes I made when I first did them. So I just want to thank you. Like, oh my God, it's been 41 minutes. I can't believe I can talk this long. But I'm glad you're here because traveling Africa is amazing. It changed my life. It made me so much of a better person. It gave me so many cool memories and experiences, helped me meet people all over the world. And then it helped me, I mean, it led to me moving to Ethiopia, which has been amazing. So I always close with this quote from Richard Mullen. And he says, the only man I envy is the man who has not yet been to Africa, for he has so much to look forward to. You guys, all you've heard about Africa has been horrible. Like everything from the media to, you know, the news to what your friends and family probably have told you about is always usually awful. And what I'm trying to tell you is that traveling Africa is actually amazing. And so when you travel, you actually discover the good things. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me on my email, backpackingafricaforbeginners@gmail.com. But really, I am so excited to help, you know, inspire anyone who wants to travel Africa. And then, of course, if you're in Ethiopia, you can say hi to me, except for the fact that Ethiopia is having some political problems. It's not really super safe to travel right now, but the rest of most African countries are fantastic. So anyways, thank you so much for joining me. You know, it's not just about traveling Africa. It's about being the kind of person who can have big dreams, who can follow your heart, who can make big things happen, who can do scary things, who can do things that the rest of the world thinks is crazy. You know, like traveling Africa is awesome in itself, but it's about who it makes you to be that is so valuable. So, you know, be the kind of person who follows your dream. Whether you sign up for my course or not, I don't care. I just want to see you traveling Africa because I know it's going to be life-changing for you. So thank you for joining. And again, if you have any questions, reach out to me on email, and I hope you sign up for my course. Thanks, guys.